Good evening, Danvers. Good afternoon, Danvers. This is Mark Zubrick with the topics of the town news. This is September 24th, and I have my co-host, special guest, Keith Lucy, with me today. And as always, John Toomey is still on staff here with us, but currently unavailable due to being cautious about his exposure to the outside world. So we have a symbolic picture here, the Danvers Town Seal. And I think what we'll be doing is we'll be talking about it for a while throughout the show because it's very significant of what this town is and what the seal stands for. So now we get into our show presentation of the news stories. And our topics of the town news production will consist of at least 5 segments. We may run out of time, but we'll go on. The first story we have is a continuation of the last week's story, and it's regarding the Danvers school system, which I believe and many people in town believe is in disarray. School issues regarding discrimination and fear of reprisal have been flying around. Everybody's talking about it. But if we can go into it briefly, Keith, Danvers School Committee requests audit of student behavior. So School Committee Chair David Thompson said reports of racist statements being made in schools and revealed on social media must be addressed. I will claim indifference because I don't go on social media except on my email. So if you can start this thing, Keith, I think it'll be great.
Well, I think the gloss over has already started, Mark. The claims of racist and homophobia and other unacceptable language and behavior, from what I saw online, it wasn't so much online the activity, but the reporting of it was online. That doesn't quite go far enough. There was also discussion of improper teacher conduct, improper behavior between teachers and students. So there's a lot more than just, no, I shouldn't say just, because racism, homophobia, and unacceptable language and behavior in the schools is unacceptable. It goes back to, what we've said for a while, Mark, is the Danvers public schools are not often what people believe they to be. They're not, if you're lucky enough to have a very high performing student, the school will treat you very well, and you can do very well there. If you're a special needs student, from what I've heard, it's also a very welcoming environment. But if you're anywhere in between, you're really at risk of falling behind in the school system. They pay attention to the extremes and not to the big middle.
And in a moment, we'll get into what is actually going on right now in the school system. But earlier this month, Superintendent Lisa Dana sent a note to parents and students to say administrators were looking into posts by students and that were contrary to our mission to provide an inclusive school environment free from discrimination after being contacted by the current and former students. Mm-hmm. So this issue continues and is being dragged out and being swept under the rug because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want the actual residents of this town who are paying the bills to know what is actually going on. So
you started by saying Dr. Dana sent an email. Did you get one?
No, I did not.
Is it only parents of students?
It must have been an exclusive email to a select few because I know I didn't get one. Our other town meeting members have not got one.
Well, that's
I
what it
don't
said. It
even
said
know.
send a note to parents and students.
Right.
What about taxpayers? What about
Yeah.
every, we have that reverse 911 system that they like to tell us about, hazardous waste day and about, voting and registration and everything else. This is an important issue here. And this really kind of goes right back to what we'll be talking about later, Mark. They like to put up a facade of inclusion, right? And then they don't follow through. It's a lot of words and not a lot of action, right?
Right.
And I'd like to understand more of what went on in a public session. But what's going to happen here is what normally happens: the great town method of solving problems is drag it out, drag it out, drag it out, drag it out. The fury goes away. Those that are upset stop showing up, and the problem is solved.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
Well, let's continue. And the question that I had last show was, who is in charge of the schools right now? It seems like the school committee is the head of the school department. However, it appears like our business manager, who has now been assigned the duties of assistant superintendent because they couldn't give him another position. He's been doing that for a long time. He's done a great job, but now it appears like he's the assistant superintendent, and Lisa Dana seems to be in the background. I wonder what's going on, but let's move on. New kind of familiar feeling for Danvers schools this fall. Superintendent of School Lisa Dana preaches teamwork and patience as the district works through the first days of school amid a hybrid model. What the school system or the school committee and the administration has decided to break this school year into two, they call them cohorts A and cohort B, and another 15% of the students which are totally on remote control. So what they have done is the first day of school, the Danvers students engaged on Wednesday, which is last week, which was the day all students attended school remotely under this district hybrid learning system. Then there was the first day of school on Thursday, when Danvers welcomed students back in the building for the first time since an onset of coronavirus health crisis in March, when cohort B was in the classroom. On Monday, there will be yet another first day of school when cohort A is set in classroom learning for the first time. There's a lot of the high school picture, if we can put that up, David. There's a welcome sign to Danvers High School. But the thing is, Dana also said that 85% of the Danvers students are enrolled in a hybrid learning model, with 15% choosing to attend school fully remote. So I don't know what kind of a education system we're teaching to our students, but they're never in school full day at a time. So Dana said district is looking at natural breaks in the schedule already. They're looking for vacation periods, the end of the quarter and vacations as opportunities for students to shift from remote to hybrid learning or vice versa. Well, if you look deeper, I have the Baker ramps up pressure on low-risk districts to get students back into school. Keith? What do you think about that?
Well, he's finally doing the right thing. And to answer your question earlier, who really runs our local schools? And it's interesting that they pretend like the school committee and the superintendent does, but 9 times out of 10, or even higher than that, you'll find that when we have these curriculum directors and these superintendents that talk about curriculum and programs, and they're just following the state guidelines, more than 9 times out of 10. So the state's really running our public schools. according to their guidelines. And then when we have Baker, Governor Baker, it says ramps up pressure on low-risk districts to get students back into schools. Danvers has been a green community, right? We've been a low-risk community since well before the school year started. Back in August, Mark, before the show started, you and I looked up data that showed that we've been at 1% or lower of positive test cases since late August and earlier. It's I'm not sure what is going on here, but Baker does say local officials run their local schools, but the state has an obligation to ensure that local officials are providing the best possible education, right? They have no way of forcing them to do that, right? They can come up with this remote model. And again, what's going to happen, Mark, as you know and I know, that, and I've spoken to friends of mine who have kids in the public school, back last spring, and then checked in with them again earlier this week to say, hey, how's it going, right? And what you'll find is that you'll find the families with the higher performing students have no problem with a remote model, with a hybrid model, or any model. Because to quote my good buddy, he said, we are not going to let the public be solely in charge of our children's education.
That's where parents take control.
But he said, we're not going to let the schools be in charge of our child's education. So the higher performing students are going to get through this just fine. Same with the special needs students. I'm sure the special needs students have been identified and are getting resources that they need.
They are right now. I can see the buses coming around.
Who falls through the cracks is that middle group,
which
right?
Is roughly 80% of the students.
That needs the extra nudge, the extra push that an in-person teaching experience provides, right? And that's just so unfortunate when we want to be inclusive. So to finish up though, Mark, what are they doing to bridge the gaps? I talked about this before the show. The Danvers Recreation Department, not the school department, Danvers Recreation Department has created not a daycare program, but a remote learning program. This is not after school. The times of this program are 7:30 to 2:30, the full school year. You pick 2 days a week you want to go, okay? But the problem is, it's not free. It's $50 a session, 2 sessions per week. The school year lasts roughly 36 weeks. This program would cost a family over $3,000 per student.
But isn't
right?
that where the education should be taking place in the schools, as Governor Baker himself is pushing that to go back to the classroom? And now we are imposing another facilitating operation by our recreation department as a, I don't know, it's supposed to be educational, right?
It's not a daycare program, right? It says Danvers Recreation is offering this remote learning program, right? And guess where they're offering it? At the high school.
At the high school?
At the high school.
So what's the problem with the teachers?
I'm not sure what the teachers think of this program. As the Danvers teachers, part of the Mass Teachers Union, are they okay with Danvers Recreation providing education and learning? Right? Is recreation? This is more than recreation. This doesn't look like kickball, right? This doesn't look like dodgeball. It says will facilitate the online classroom learning experience with staff assistance, internet access, individual workspaces, and recreation activities. So it's more than just running them around. It's more than daycare. They talked about it's a remote learning program. So again, talk about not inclusive, right? What if you can't afford this for your child? Do you get to attend? Right?
I guess not.
If you're being gifted, who decides who gets the gift and who doesn't?
Right. Well, let me just follow up with the last few questions that I had on this agenda in regards to that subject. Are our young adults being taught in school by remote control? There's the debate going on between parents and teachers that the remote control of the classroom is not working. These kids are not learning much. They may be learning something, but it's a very expensive program and it isolates the students from the rest of the community. Are these schools, well, I guess they have to be safe. Are they safe in school or are they in their homes? They're at their homes, so they're safe. The problem is that many of the parents have to go to work and earn a living. And I don't think the town is even considering that effect. And are these students educated in school, and will they become productive members of our society? I mean, we're talking about high school kids. This is 4 years of high school, second year of high school that is being taught remotely. And I don't know what the results are. They don't want to measure the results right now because they don't want to go back to the classroom. So this is the status of our education system in town. And what I'm going to, attempt again is get a interview with maybe at the lowest level I can go as assistant superintendent, because the superintendent doesn't want to expose any facts about the school system. So, will they receive a diploma? Maybe. I don't know how this thing is going to work. We don't have an idea of where this thing is going. So, we need an explanation. The next story that we have is our civil liberties and constitutional freedoms are being taken away. And I'll just read a few paragraphs out of this resident petition that has been submitted to the town. Our community has always been respectful and responsive to the needs of all our residents, but during this time of current controlling rules and guidance during this epidemic, our town has failed. Our community has become embroiled in a debate about the simple, thin blue line flag. The question is to fly the flag or not to fly the flag. The recent directive against the display of the thin blue line flag on our fire apparatus has forced the hand of the residents and taxpayers of our town. This symbol of support for our fallen first responders throughout the state, throughout the country, has awakened the silent segment of our community. The issue is not the directed removal of the flag. It is the way it was done. Social experimentation is not the role of town employees. It is the role of our elected representation. And we have plenty of the experimentation. Don't kid yourself. Political actions are best left to the elected Board of Selectmen and the legislative branch of town meeting. The town meeting has the responsibility to represent the values of this town as well as anyone else. So I'm not going to read any more of this. You'll see this, presented later. Monumental changes do not always occur with fanfare and explosive action. Sometimes they take place gradually, a result of actions that initially appear relatively inconsequential, but develop into extraordinary alterations in the very fabric of our society. Gradual changes are currently occurring in our town of Danvers. So I will, the petition for the special town meeting is an opportunity for the return of the respect to the affected first responders. The town meeting is our final bastion of democracy, and we will be asked to reaffirm our responsibility to our residents. Town meeting is acting as per the town seal motto, and the quote is great, the king unwilling. We must restore respect for our first responders and decide to restore the thin blue line flag on our fire apparatus. So, Keith, we have been watching what the responses have been to the petition that was filed to the Board of Selectmen, which scheduled a special town meeting for October 26th. And the most recent one is unclear if thin blue line citizens petitions is enforceable. Take it away, Keith.
Well, again, Mark, we've discussed this earlier today, and it's, again, the same old bag of tricks when it comes to, trying to prevent the public from being heard. And that is just so unfortunate. I mean, a lot of town meeting members, a lot of members of the Board of Selectmen, a lot of people in town want to pretend as though we live under this town meeting rule, this town meeting form of government, the king unwilling, we will do what we want, right? This mantra goes back to when they founded the town, right? And yet now we follow the town charter, we follow the town manager act, we get the 200 signatures, we get double the 200 required signatures, and now they try to bring in town council to tell us that this isn't enforceable. And so I made a list of what I've heard so far about why this is unenforceable. We now will hear, but by August 6th, we'll get an opinion from town council, who, remember, town council is not an elected position. Town council is not a voted on position. Town council isn't even an appointed position. Town council is a hired position, right? Hired by the town manager who made this decision in the first place. Mark, in my 20 years of hearing from town council, I have never once heard a town council opinion oppose the person who was asking for it, which was the town manager. So, but the bottom line is, this whole thing hinges on, their whole argument hinges on whether or not that this flag is defined as a political symbol, is what they're complaining about now. That state law prohibits the display of political symbols on town-owned property and flagpoles. I would rather wait until I heard from the Attorney General about that than I would listen to the town council, who again is hired by the town manager. It's a very, very slippery slope to go down to say that this flag is a political symbol, and not then later on in June say that the rainbow flag, the pride flag, isn't also a political symbol. Unfortunately, there are some that will argue that one is and one isn't. They argue that this is a political symbol because it's been used in various presidential campaign rallies, right? The American flag is used in presidential campaign rallies. Is that a political symbol? Our current president mentions America often than anyone. He wants to make America great again. Keep America great. Is America now a political symbol? I don't think so. The only thing political, Mark, in this argument are the politicians that are making it political. And unfortunately, Mr. Bartha has become a politician now in town, and not just a hired employee, an employee hired by the Board of Selectmen. So, in addition, we've heard from the board, from Mr. Trask, his first shot across the bow was that this flying of this flag was nothing more than a labor action. Now, in classic politician sense, he's at the Board of Selectmen meeting and he declares that this is a labor action, right? Brought on by a police union that asked fire departments. Well, he did recant that online, right? But it's the classic move of make the accusation in a wide audience and correct yourself in a small audience. I would expect him, if he had one iota of dignity, which I know he does not, right? He would correct himself in the same forum that he made the mistake. He should say that he discussed it with the union president of the Danvers Fire Department, and he now knows that it was not a result of labor action. That was complete garbage. And what he's trying to push out there is uncertainty and doubt. David Mills is trying the same thing with town council. They also said this is a violation of flag code. Well, if you want to, anything that's a 3 foot by 5 foot piece of fabric then is a violation of flag code, because you can modify any flag to be any other flag if you make enough changes in it. How many changes equal a new flag? The pride flag has stripes on it. The American flag has stripes on it. Is the pride flag a violation of flag code because it has stripes? I don't think so. The next one was, this flag is not okay, but the thick blue line flag or decal is okay. So now we're going to pick and choose what's political and what's not. If the thick blue line flag starts showing up at political rallies, will that now be banned? If the pride flag starts showing up at presidential relays, will that flag be banned? In fact, I watched a video of a President Trump rally today in Swampscott, which was flying a pride flag with Trump 2020 on it. I guess we're over the rainbow now, to make a pun. The pride flag now must be a political symbol because it was used today in Swampscott at a political rally. That's what we say, Mark.
Keith,
Also, one more point I wanted to make was that we're at a point where one complaint is enough. Sometimes. One complaint is enough to take down a flag, to make a change. Sometimes. As you saw from Bob Amaralt's emails that got dumped online, a complaint was made about the pride flag. Nothing was done about it. Nothing should have been done about it. And nothing should have been done about the thin blue line flying on the back of of fire trucks in support of our Danvers police officers. It wasn't a statement about Minneapolis. It wasn't a statement about Kentucky. It wasn't a statement about anything except Danvers police officers.
and that's absolutely correct. And the thing that I noticed in this article about David Mills, he's talking ethics on this.
Well, okay, to follow up again, 2 more points about Mr. Mills directly, right? Mr. Mills, he should talk about ethics, and he was an ethics judge, I guess.
Right.
Well, it'll be public knowledge on October 6th, but because of the email dump that was facilitated, the email dump the town hall provided was not a complete email dump. So I submitted a FOIA request and I got a more complete, probably not fully complete, but a more complete email dump. Well, in that email dump, I have evidence of a serial conversation between Mr. Mills, started by Mr. Mills, and the other 4 members of the Board of Selectmen. That is known as a serial conversation and is a direct violation of the Attorney General's open meeting law guidelines in the handbook provided by the Attorney General. That complaint has gone to the Board of Selectmen. It needs to be addressed on October 6th. If it is not addressed on October 6th, then the complaint goes further to the Attorney General's office for a ruling. But the second point about Mr. Mills' comments was, and listen to this, Mark, because we sit under this banner of the King Unwilling town meeting, the greatest of all citadels, right? Mr. Mills added that he thinks it would be bad for locals to set a precedent of attempting to take matters into their own hands regardless of the law. He does not want locals to take matters into their own hands. Mr. Mills would have been a great loyalist to the king. Mr. Mills would have been saying, hey, things aren't so bad in 1775 and 1776. We love in this town to broadcast to the world our involvement in the Revolutionary War. And yet Mr. Mills sits there and says, it's bad for locals to set a precedent of attempting to take matters into their own hands. That's shameful.
Well,
under the motto of the King Unwilling, yet you sit there and say it's not a good idea for locals to take. Mr. Mills should understand that bad laws need overturning. He should understand that more than anyone, and he wants us to sit by and do nothing. Shameful.
Well, Keith, I think the the Indians have surrounded the wagons, or the campers have surrounded the wagons around the town manager. But the problem is that he's hinting at being unethical, and he is, Mills, retired judge who previously served on the State Ethics Commission, said it is against the law to use publicly owned property to advertise political opinions.
Right. That's exactly, that's what I mentioned. And so the ruling is really hinged upon, is this a political opinion or is this a show of support for police officers? Right? If you're going to pretend that a 3x5 piece of cloth is a political symbol that supports one candidate or another, right, then you have to do the same with the rainbow pride flag. You have to do the same. And that's unfortunate if that was to ever happen, right? We discussed it at our weekly meetings, Mark, on the committee, the citizens group, to get the flag back up, that we would actually like to move forward recognizing more groups. City of Salem flies the Juneteenth flag at Riley Plaza every year. They fly the pride flags every year. They fly multiple ethnic flags every year. We should be doing that. If we insist on making people that disagree go back into their boxes, go back into their echo chambers, right? We are fomenting hate, is what we're doing. If we call everyone out to the public square and say, everyone talk, everyone understand everyone love everyone, then that's the real path forward. And this, the inclusion committee, which I wish I could attend tonight in person, but it looks like they're doing that remote access 20 seconds late. You really can't participate. And I want to tell them, real inclusion includes police officers. In our next segment, we'll get into more specifics about what I mean. But for right now, let's just remember that police officers are people too, right? I'm not going to simplify it by saying blue lives matter. That oversimplifies things. Police officers, firefighters are people too, right? And they need support, especially in this time.
Well, there's been such a outcry from outside of our small community, from the state and from the federal and other states. We are now embarking on revising the police, restrictions, because the state has been involved in this thing now. Our police department and our fire department are accredited and certified for our facilities and all the services that they provide. This has been done 15, 20 years ago.
And Mark, again, it reinforces our point that Danvers has often pounded its chest in saying, we are a model. We were not just an accredited police department, we were the first accredited police department in the state of Massachusetts. Let's be the first town. Actually, we're too late to be the first town, because Weymouth and Braintree have decided they will support their police at any level, and they will fly the thin blue line flag on the back of fire equipment. And in fact, the Hingham flag that was taken down was delivered to Weymouth to be flown, right? So there are towns in this state that are willing to support police officers. Does that make everyone in Weymouth a racist? No. We live in a time, Mark, where if you show support for something else, you must believe everything that person believes. Completely wrong. Let's be a model. Let's really show the state how we can do things differently, and let's be more inclusive to everyone.
And that's where our form of government, especially, it's by the people, for the people. Basically, we need to stand up and be counted as town meeting members to represent this position to all of the town meeting members. And we need to have them all on board with us, because this is something that's important. The morale of our, first responders has been, bashed, basically.
Well, okay, so Mark, let me jump to that comment, because it's the next section. It was going to be about was the plea for unity. If you want to get to that one now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the plea for unity. I was pleased to read that statement from the town manager. It read to me as though he had been listening to what we've been saying from the very get-go. When he says, it's been an emotional and educational few weeks. We've discussed the meaning and power of symbols and how best to make our first responders feel supported, and how best to make every member of the Danvers community feel included. The four of them, police, fire, town manager, and chairman of the board, found ourselves at the center of the discussion, even though the discussion itself is bigger than any of us, the symbol or the town of Danvers, right? So one of the things, though, I'll make an objection to one comment in there. He said, the substance of the discussion was rock solid in agreement that we respect and appreciate the community, the police, the first responders. He's wrong. He's wrong. There were two speakers. One of them was a woman from out of town, right? But she was recognized as a person from in town. She made comments, and at the end of her 3 minutes, she concluded by saying, Black and brown children are being murdered by police.
Well, it's the wrong town.
That is obscene. The second speaker spent his 3 minutes dredging up 20-year-old, 10-year-old history about a few police officers that didn't act so well. That doesn't happen. So my point was, the folks that spoke in favor of the thin blue line flag was saying, let's support everybody. And those opposed to the thin blue line were calling us racists, that Lisa Marie stood up and said that she's been called a racist. What do you think I've been called? What do you think I've been treated? Right? It's unbelievable the comments I get for trying to support police officers. The good news is, and you know, you've heard straight from Scott himself, that the police officers support us. And here's some interesting stats, Mark. When do we get serious about support for police officers? Are we going to now take a disenfranchised class, whether you want to call it the LGBT community or you want to call it the Black and brown community? Why do we quickly rush to try and replace one subjugated group with another subjugated group instead of embracing all of them? Because we're quickly creating a subclass of humans known as police officers. We mentioned this before. Since 2016, there's been 170 felonious murders of police officers. That's one every 10 days. In 2020, Mark, it's 37 so far. That's one every week. One every week. But further than that, Mark, further than that, more severe than that, is the suicide rate among police officers. Are we going to wait until a police officer in our town is murdered? And if you don't think they've been injured, seriously injured, you need to go and sit down and talk to a few of them. People that have their faces slashed, their throats slashed, things thrown on them. It's disgusting. But the suicide rate, Mick, I want to discuss this. There's been 125 first responders, police officer suicides in 2020 alone. Mark, that's 3 per week. 3 per week. The average rate of suicide in the country is 13 per 100,000. The average rate for police officers is 18. It's 50% higher than the going average for the entire country. It's an epidemic that's getting out of control. And let's not get it to the point where we're waiting until there's a full-blown crisis. We're here. Let's address it. Let's make sure they're supported. Let's not wait till one of these tragedies comes to our town.
Keith, one thing that I want to bring up is there was a interview that I did, and I think it's Corey Ryan. David, can you just play that for now, please? This was during the conversation with the selectmen at the high school. We tried to talk to her without the mask. I don't know how that's going to work out. What drove you to this?
I mean, this is the first time I've ever turned up at a town meeting.
You can take your
or
mask off.
anything like that. So, I think that I was invited by one of the selectmen after engaging in a conversation on Facebook. He didn't suggest why he was inviting me, but it was brought to my attention. It seemed like the overwhelming majority of people speaking on the internet about this topic were in favor of keeping the flag on.
Right.
So I did feel compelled to come and voice my opinion because.
And your major concern about keeping the flag is what?
My concern is about keeping everybody safe. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. Especially, I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see any more innocent people in the streets killed by police or by anybody else. And I don't want to see my family who work in law enforcement hurt because of protests or riots or looting or whatever is going on. And in my view, the only way to improve the safety of everybody is to find common ground and inch our way toward a more just and equitable society where everybody feels safe, everybody feels included, everybody feels that they have equal protection and rights. So when you fly something that suggests that that the public agencies stand against that movement for equity, of course there's going to be mistrust in the community, and that's a dangerous situation for everybody.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for commenting. And I'd like to, do you guys have any questions? Okay. So that was just a reaction that I gathered at the meeting at the high school. And that message of what this meeting was all about really did not settle in. The reaction from individuals that I interviewed basically was totally different than what I expected. They are lacking the depth of information of what this meeting was about. This meeting was about why did the town hall take down the flag, and they took it down without consulting their political leaders that we have elected to be in town hall. I don't think people understand what it was going on. But I want to read one paragraph here. The Danvers town leaders reaffirmed the support for the law enforcement, but at that meeting, the selectmen, the four selectmen, four out of five selectmen and select woman decided to reaffirm the authority of the town manager to do what he did. But the one thing that they forgot to do is this something that the Board of Selectmen wanted him to do? This was an act that was deemed to look political. This flag, the town manager made it political. And with one resident complaint, he took it down, but the Board of Selectmen didn't do anything about it. They basically stood right behind to, get along with the town manager. So who's running this town? I don't know where our selectmen are. And I've been saying for years that they're asleep at the switch, but that's something else. So, but also in light of what we just said, Danvers town leaders reaffirmed support for law enforcement while pledging to create a better understanding for residents who feel marginalized in a joint statement released Friday morning. This was in the paper. Town officials, public safety chief statement reaffirms support for law enforcement while pledging to make Danvers welcoming for all. if we had one complaint and the reaction was so swift, then how is the town hall reacting to the multiple complaints that have been presented to the Board of Selectmen on various occasions on issues that the residents have in this town? So the problem is that we're reacting to something that's brewing out in the distance, and we're afraid of something. We should be responding and resolving the issues for all residents. And if this was an issue that the town manager wanted to resolve, bring it up to the Board of Selectmen. They are the final decision makers for those types of decisions. Keith?
Yeah, I mean, Mark, we agree. And I just got to say, you know, one selectman equated support, right?
Yeah.
Words were, I support the Danvers Police. For 20 years, I have voted in favor of their budget. What a disgusting human. He equates support with spending other people's money. I want to directly ask him, when's the last time you spoke with a police officer and asked him, hey, how you doing? How are things? We had a shooting up at the Danvers State Hospital a couple years ago. A Danvers police officer took a person's life, right? Didn't make the national headlines, right? It was a white person, right? I saw that officer within the next week, and I said, hey, how you doing? Are things okay? You know, you getting through this okay? And he was doing fine. And I believe him. He's still in the force. He's still doing fine. I check in with him every now and then. I ask him, how you doing? I'll ask Scott Frost, how you doing, man? How are things at the station? How's morale, right? Because Mark, we said it last time, we'll say it again. When you have a police officers roaming the streets, do you want them to have high morale or low morale? You want
high morale.
High morale. It's invaluable, and it's not measured by voting in favor of budgets. It's measured by outreach to the police officers and above and beyond support for the police officers. It's not a matter of, oh, the blue and black decal is enough, right? It's not enough, right? There's never enough, especially as this class of people, right, become more and more marginalized by society and by now our government leaders in this town. It's disgusting. It should end. It should end today.
Thank you, Keith. I have one little paragraph here that I think struck the chord. It is clear that the broader debate over police reform, racial justice, and police brutality, like we saw this summer in Minneapolis, has landed on our shores in Danvers, and that this debate has taken a toll on morale and optimism of our public safety professionals.
Terrible.
This makes us sad, and we need to address it. And that's exactly what the residents are trying to do, is address it.
Right.
We need to listen to our first responders and understand their frustration and find ways to affirm our support for them in ways that do not feel unwelcoming to our neighbors. So, David, if you can run the clip of Scott at the rally in front of Town Hall, I think that'll be the wrap up for this section.
They all agreed that the initial, and I repeat, the initial meaning of the flag was admirable. But they agreed along with a vocal minority that it should be removed. Once again, they chose political correctness and spoiling a cancel culture. That's enough of that. We don't need that anymore. We need to support the majority, and that's what we are here tonight. So I guess it's our own fault that both the left and the right decided to make our flag a political statement. We had no say in the matter. Sadly, this has also been done to our great American flag. We've seen people on the left tear that flag down. We see them stomp on it. We see them burn it. That's not a political statement. Thousands upon thousands of people have died for that flag. They have to reaffirm the notion that it's okay to politicalize something in the name of social justice and then that canceled out. This is something we will not forget. Mr. Trask mentioned last night that this is a social matter. And then even a small minority should be enough to cancel this. This is not a social issue. I guess we could call everything a social issue now and complain until we get our way. The selectmen, and once again I say men, because they didn't include Ms. Bernard in this decision, have given way to the cancel culture. I think anybody with one shred of common sense can realize that the flag honoring fallen officers in our service as a profession is either a social or a political cause. That is absolutely not true, and it's inaccurate. Welcome to 2020 where the cancel culture rules and politicians pander to it. Hopefully this will be remembered when the next political elections occur. I explained to us last night what the flag, or explained to everybody last night what the flag meant to us. Personally, having 2 friends killed on the job and having one of my co-workers and brothers severely injured on this job hits home to me. I, along with my fellow officers, have seen unimaginable things that have taken a mental and a physical toll on all of us. This flag represents flag and sacrifice and not politics, as the selectmen, except for Mrs. Bernard, and the vocal minority pretend to believe. Really, the main issue here was it really a flag in the fire truck that made people offended, as some said, or placed them in fear, or was it a blind hatred of law enforcement? I think those who are here with common sense know it's a hatred of law enforcement driving this. This is exactly what it is. We've been called burglars, we've been called racist.
David.
Yep.
All right, Keith, I thought that was very appropriate to wrap that section up because our police and our first responders, including fire, ambulance, nurses, and even our employees, disenfranchised right now because of actions that shouldn't have happened.
No.
We are a better town than that. We can develop a methods to respect everyone, and we have in the past. We've had our Christmas, demonstrate. I mean, our Christmas wreaths and our political ads that were placed in the past, and Hanukkah was always, celebrated. And the thing is that we are a better town than what has happened. And now we're feeling the punch from the town hall, basically. And we need to put that on the table, let the town meeting discuss it, debate it, and then if they want to, we should ask them to vote to support the position that we have presented. So
Mark, just as a, to restate what you just said, we are a better town than that. And really the question comes back to not a statement of we are, but the question really is, are we, right? And we've been vilified for spending taxpayer dollars to get an answer to that question. And I think that taxpayer dollars are due to get an answer to that question. And so, if we get to town meeting and we hear a good, robust debate and town meeting chooses to not support the police officers by flying that flag, then we will know the answer to that question.
Well, thank you, Keith. I think that's a very appropriate statement. And I hope that we can convince the 144 town meeting members to stand by and support the first responders that we have been, trying to address. So now we have 4 minutes, 6 minutes. I'm telling you, time is flying by real quick.
Well, we have one little topic to get to, and then you wrap up, right?
All right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I guess you wanted to get to one more topic about state and federal elections?
All I wanted to do on this is to continue addressing the candidacies of our state representatives for the 13th district covering Danvers, West Peabody, and parts of Middleton. That is a position most relevant for Danvers. Federal elections will have a slight difference because the state is anticipated to go Democrat, and though Danvers has at least 60% unenrolled voters, which means we do not know how these individuals will vote. Hopefully they'll vote in the right direction to replace and identify some individuals that will lead us in a better way. The 5 individuals that we have as candidates for the House of Representatives for the state of Massachusetts is Bob May. He's the Republican candidate, and his interview is being shown on DCAT. Bill Bates, independent candidate. His interview is also being shown on DCAT. Sally Kearns, Democratic candidate. She has declined to be interviewed, but that's okay. She is a candidate, so that's what I want to identify. Jason Guida, another independent candidate, and his interview is on cable. Chris Cohane, another independent candidate. He has not been available for an interview, and I would call on him, and I have had no response. So the final verdict of this whole show is that we are in support, and we would like to have the whole town meeting support the motion that has been placed before town meeting. And on October 6th, the selectmen will be addressing that particular motion, where we have placed before them with 450 signatures to support it. Now, as we have heard earlier, the selectmen are wiggling out, trying to wiggle us out of, position,
I
because
call it unloading the bag of tricks.
there you go. The unloading the bag of tricks is a good term, but
You must be getting under their skin.
we're getting under their skin. Oh, we've been under their skin for a long time. Final comments, Keith. And what I like to do is I like to show, David, can you show the turkey demonstration that I'm planning on the next show and the following show? Because last year, John Toomey, Matt Duggan, and myself got 5 turkeys on our table because they represented the turkey selectmen that were in office at that time with the town manager. Now, this year, we're going to use the same turkeys because I think we're in the same boat, and we need to identify these turkeys, and we'll do that next week, next show. So, Keith, last comment?
I'll just invite anyone to reach out on Facebook, Restoring Respect and Dignity in Danvers.
Okay, and I do not use Facebook because that is such an invasion to your privacy that I've decided not to use it.
Sure, I understand.
I use the airwaves of DCAT, and I appreciate all the comments that they have done. And as a matter of fact, last night I attended the annual meeting, but even then, there was a selectman at the meeting that was trying to question my credentials, press credentials, and he wanted a truth finder for everything that I said. This is a commentary. So thank you, Danvers, and we appreciate you. And Keith, thank you for coming to the show. And we'll continue this on October 8th is the next show. And good night, Danvers. Good night, Keith.
Good night.